Hi there, this is Brittany from By Brittany Goldwyn. I post videos about plants and projects, and today we are going to be talking about how to harvest and dry rosemary. We are going to be talking about how to do it without a dehydrator. So the first method will be a traditional air drying method, and the second method will be an oven drying method. So let's get started by taking some rosemary cuttings. Okay, so I am sitting here in the rain next to my large rosemary plant, and we are going to take a couple cuttings. Unlike when you're propagating rosemary from stem cuttings, you don't have to be too mindful of where you're taking the cutting on the plant. So when you're propagating it, you want to take softer growth from near the tips of the stems, and you don't want to take the woody growth. However, when you're drying the rosemary, it doesn't really matter where you take the cutting from on the plant. So when you're pruning it to maintain its shape, this is a good time to use the cuttings to dry for different things that you'd want to use dried rosemary for. I'll give you a closer look here about what I mean with stem cuttings. You can really cut anywhere on the plant. Here's a look, and then I will just pick this random stem and snip it off. You really don't need to overthink this. You can see it's got that soft growth on top and the woody growth on the bottom, and it doesn't matter if it has a combination of the two or either one of those types of growth. Now, after you have your cuttings, the first step is to thoroughly rinse them off. I don't use soap or anything for this, just some warm water to make sure you clean off any of the excess dirt or bugs or spider webs or anything that might be on them. Now, I would recommend shaking out all of the excess water and then using a towel to gently pat them dry to get out as much of the water as you can. It's okay if it's not completely dry. That's what we'll handle in the next step. The next step after you've rinsed off and dried your rosemary cutting is to remove the bottom-most sets of leaves from the sprig. Now, this isn't completely necessary, but it does give you a nice clean area where you can tie a twine to air dry the sprig. Now, as for where to air dry your sprigs, you just want to look for anywhere indoors that has cool, dry air. So it's December here in Maryland, so that pretty much means anywhere in my house is fine. I'm standing right in front of a sunny kitchen window, and it has a little curtain rod up top, so that's where I'm going to be hanging my sprigs. Now, you can use a little piece of twine to just tie to the very end stem of your sprig, and then tie the other end to the top of the curtain rod. However, I'm going to be using some pipe cleaners because I have these from my daughter's craft closet, and I find that they are easier to create a little hook on like that. So the hook will hold on to the curtain rod, and then you can wrap the bottom of the hook tightly around the sprig. And that seems to work really well, maybe even more secure than using a piece of twine. Now, I'm losing some of my light here, but hopefully you can see what these look like with pipe cleaners tied up to the curtain rod. These rosemary sprigs will probably take a couple of weeks to dry. You can check them every week or so, and if the leaves start to pop off, if they become really fragile when you touch them, that probably means that it's dry enough. So you may want to be checking these every couple of days just to make sure you've got them in a dry enough spot, or you don't need to rotate them or anything like that if you've got them bundled together drying. It just really depends on the conditions in your home and how dry the air is. Now, for drying sprigs in a conventional oven, you want to set your oven to the lowest possible setting you have. For our oven, that means 170 degrees Fahrenheit. If your oven gets hotter than that, it does not get that low as its lowest temperature. You want to make sure you're watching your rosemary closely while you're dehydrating it to make sure it's not burning and it's getting just the right amount of dry. Now, you can take a piece of aluminum foil and either put entire sprigs of rosemary on the aluminum foil to dry out, and then once it's dry, you can remove all of the leaves like that, or you can remove the leaves beforehand like this and scatter them around a piece of aluminum foil. Now, I think there are pros and cons to both methods. If you remove the leaves beforehand, you may be stuck with pieces that look a little bit like this. So a piece that's not necessarily just the single leaves because it comes off with a tiny piece of the stem. If you remove the leaves after you've dried them off, it seems like the leaves will come off easier like this. So they'll just be single leaves and they won't have pieces of the stem attached to them. Here's what the piece of aluminum foil I'll be popping in my oven looks like. You can see I have a mixture of sprigs and smaller pieces that I've already pulled off of the stems. Okay, so now my rosemary sprigs and the rosemary leaves are toasty here in the oven, set to 170 degrees Fahrenheit. So now I will set a timer and check in on this in about an hour. So setting it at such a low temperature and checking in every hour or so will ensure that the pieces don't dehydrate too quickly and burn. You don't want that to happen. You just want to remove all of the moisture from them. So this is generally going to take between 2 and 4 hours. I will start checking at 1 hour, and I would recommend that you start checking around then too, just to make sure that it's not drying out faster than you had hoped for, in which case you may end up with burnt rosemary toward the end. Okay, so I just took my rosemary out of the oven. It had been in there for about 2.5 hours, and I would say that we are about dried here. When I pick up the sprigs that had the leaves still on them and I go like this, everything just really easily falls off. It seems pretty brittle and pretty dry. So what I'm going to do here is pull off all of these little leaves from the sprigs, and then I'm going to just crush it up a little bit more so that it works a little bit better in the salt scrub that I'm going to be making. So that about covers how to cut and dry rosemary sprigs from your garden without using a dehydrator. So we covered the air drying method and drying in a conventional oven. If you guys have any questions about either of these methods or want to share with me what you're going to make, please feel free to drop a comment below. And until then, happy planting.